Good morning, everyone. My name is David Vittoria with CareRisk Partners, and I appreciate you joining us for this webinar, Calm Amidst the Chaos. These are incredibly stressful times for us, and I'm grateful that all of you have taken a few minutes out of your busy, I'm sure very chaotic days right now to be here with us. I do hope everyone here this Friday morning is in good health and that your families, your friends, colleagues, and coworkers are as well. A few housekeeping items for us to cover. First, thanks to all of us for muting our phones. Also, you'll see on our agenda in a moment that we've designated time at the end of our session today to go through any questions that are submitted. And you can ask those questions using the chat feature in GoToMeeting by clicking on the chat bubble. Time permitting, I will get to at least one or two of those questions before we wrap up here in about a half hour. Just to note that the recorded webinar, which will be posted, will not identify any companies or participants, just so you're aware. And we'll make sure that everyone who signed up for our session today receives this slide deck following the workshop. Over the next 25 minutes and after a brief introduction, I look forward to providing you with a few practical actions that you can take, things you can do to support yourself and help those around you right now, especially the younger ones in our family, who are not only highly attuned to the stress around them, but especially vulnerable to its detrimental effects. I'll share some valuable resources with you and make sure that everyone has my contact information for follow-up when we're done. Before we get started, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my background shortly, but for now, important to mention that I'm a licensed clinician, but I'm not a physician. If any questions come up for me to take back to the skilled medical folks on our team here, I will commit to doing that and getting back to you individually and also sending out relevant messages to the entire group of attendees as needed. Also, while we're keeping to our 25 minutes or so today, I'll make another commitment to you, which is that anything that we do need to follow up on afterwards, even if you'd just like to keep in touch via email or cell or text, we'll do that as well. I don't want the compressed format of this session, obviously intended to help us, but not be too much of a disruption to the busy days we're all experiencing. I don't want the brevity of our talk to inadvertently add to anyone's stress where something comes up, but maybe we don't have a lot of time to process it or run short on time and we're not able to button something up that's important to you. So let's commit to leaving room for a follow-up after our webinar if anyone would benefit from that. I'll be sticking around after the session past our 30-minute mark and for as long as we need to field any questions and allow us to talk a bit longer if we do need to. So with that, let's get started. And as we do, I want to invite everyone right where you are at this moment to stop, make sure your phone's on mute, close your eyes, and just take 3 deep breaths right now. We'll take 15 seconds just to get us all grounded. Thank you. I thought we all might need a few cleansing breaths right now. And some of us may not be aware that just that 15 seconds of 2 or 3 deep breaths, like we just did together, regulates what's called our autonomic nervous system. Our heart slows down, blood pressure is lowered, stress hormones are reduced, and your body, even in a few seconds, gets the message that you are safe and relaxed. As I mentioned, my name is David Vittoria. I work here with our clinical team at CareRisk. I'm a licensed clinician, a social worker for over 25 years, and I've had the privilege of working with men and women as well as adolescents and children in the past in a variety of clinical situations and settings, really spanning the full diagnostic spectrum, from coaching executives around anxiety and stress years ago to working in hospitals and healthcare systems and running programs while also working hand in hand with employee assistance programs and HR departments to help staff, employees, physicians, and other healthcare professionals really take care of their mental health and wellness. And on the other end of the spectrum, I've spent a lot of time working with folks that have severe mental illness, both on the clinical service delivery and programmatic side, as well as in the payer and managed care world. I've designed and delivered training programs back when I did some consulting as what I'll call a corporate therapist, if you will. And many of those engagements were focused on helping people master stress and find healthy and productive ways to combat anxiety in all its forms and in the different ways that worry and unease and apprehension manifest for each of us. Prior to coming into workers' comp and our care risk outcomes division, I've also worked with many people to help them develop customized coping strategies to deal with adversity. Whether that destabilization or change in status quo was expected, unexpected, or as we're obviously facing today, seemingly out of the blue and very new for us. As an additional point of reference, I spent quite a while doing critical incidents response work in what's called solution-focused brief trauma therapy with first responders and their families after 9/11. So I think it's prudent to bring some of what we learned from that crisis and individual and societal responses to it into this dialogue. About 2 weeks ago, right at about the time the World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 outbreak a global pandemic, the CARES team started talking about ways that we could further leverage our experience and our clinical expertise to try and help people who need it right now. We quickly realized as we were listening to our customers and our patients, our colleagues and coworkers, that what is most needed right now for many of us are three things that are luckily woven into our DNA as an organization: calm and resilience and connection. And I guess a couple other complementary attributes like the desire and the ability to share the information we have with as many people who may benefit from it. It's important to us, even if just for a few minutes, to be reminded that we're not alone, that there are what I'll call positive pathogens as well, because compassion and real empathy, helping to bolster strength and resilience in ourselves, our coworkers, customers, claimants, neighbors, family members, you name it. These positive coping strategies are also contagious, and they can spread even just over the phone or a webinar. So the 6-foot rule can't stop us. We can socially distance and I think still meaningfully connect, and that's the kind of support that I want to be able to offer you today and going forward. And we are definitely in some challenging times, aren't we? These snapshots just from the news yesterday. And it can really feel like we're getting bombarded from all sides right now. Travel restrictions and economic turmoil, communities overwhelmed, people increasingly short-tempered, and whether it's because of empty shelves at the store or really limited reserves of patience and tolerance for a lot of folks right now, if we get tunnel vision to all of that and we only see that, then scarcity becomes the norm. And it's no coincidence, by the way, that the words scarcity and scared start with the same two letters, both words stemming from the same old English root prefix eschars, which was originally translated to mean restricted or absent, especially as it relates to one who is in a difficult situation. Hence use of the phrase, make myself scarce, or derivatives later on in English language like the word escape. So one of my goals today is to fill in some of that scarcity that we might be experiencing with abundance, to teach us ways that we can make ourselves present, not scarce, and to embrace what we can't control and fight, even if flight seems like the more natural response right now. And what makes a lot of this difficult for us is that we're faced with a potent combination of really destabilizing influences, circumstances which individually by themselves activate the amygdala in our brains. That's our risk, reward, fight, flight, emotional regulation center that's right in the middle of our gray matter, and it's about the size of a pea. The need for certainty has been hardwired in us human beings since we peeked out of caves wanting to make sure there wasn't a saber-toothed tiger out there waiting for us. And as our brains have developed over the years, sure, we have the ability to process multiple, even conflicting messages. We've evolved to recognize that we can run, we can chew, throw a baseball, drive, decide to show up to a webinar or not show up. And while these things are among the millions of actions we can control, and our brains have had a lot of practice and conditioning to what we can control and what we can't, there is still an inherent conflict in there for most of us. We're just not as comfortable with what we can't control. We tend not to feel as skilled, relatively speaking, dealing with the unexpected, the uncertain, the unfamiliar. Those things tend to be, for some of us, more difficult to deal with. They upset our balance. They throw off our emotional equilibrium, and they confront logic and even thousands of years of development, relegating most of us in times of crisis and maybe despite our best intentions to reaction, conjecture, assumption, even impatience and anger. Because as unhealthy and destructive as we know those conditioned responses can be, at least they're predictable, right? And the results are consistent, uniform in a lot of ways. We can control all of it. And however counterintuitive, these unhealthy reactions are a known quantity to us. What do we want? What do we tend to feel more comfortable with? What feels better and what makes things easier? We don't need a neuroscientist or a therapist or some guy at Caris to tell us that. I mean, give me something I can be confident in, have control over, bolstered by real information that provides me with knowledge and direction and helps me become more attuned to what's going on, more conscious of all the variables that affect my thoughts and feelings and actions, and that heighten my awareness and my insight. We are safer, more comfortable, more secure, and better able to activate our brains into rational, healthy, kind of functional fight mode, if you will, with chemicals powering that engine like dopamine and serotonin. Those are our feel-good chemicals. Conversely, uncertainty, lack of control, confusion, fear, stress, anxiety, all of these understandable conditions promote the increased production of what's called cortisol up in our brains, while at the same time regulating the production of dopamine and serotonin. So in short, if we put our attention, energy, and action into the consumption and distribution of positive messages, constructive action, meaningful personal connection, with a recognition of what we can do, and an honest assessment of what we cannot control, then we're just more likely to be less stressed, less anxious, and better equipped to make healthy decisions for ourselves and those around us. Doesn't mean we're not afraid. Fear is normal and it's natural and it helps us survive. Doesn't mean I don't feel anxious, wondering how today, tomorrow, and the next few weeks and months are going to be, and how they're going to impact me and my wife Isabel, our kids, Lauren and Kevin, our two frail, elderly, high-risk moms who both have terminal diseases. None of that magically goes away with a webinar or a clever quote or a 15-minute meditation. But there are things that can make dealing with a lot of the unknowns better right now. Here are 5 of them. Number 1, avoid excessive exposure to media coverage of COVID-19 right now. Sure, we need to watch the news, but maybe we self-limit. Maybe it's 30 minutes national news and 30 minutes local TV with no more than 5 minutes of social media or news apps in the morning and again in the early evening. And those really smart neuroscientists already know enough about our brains to tell us not to engage in any screen time within an hour of when you want to fall asleep. Repeated exposure to anxiety-provoking information not only heightens stress, but believe it or not, it can begin to rewire our brains to this always-on state of hyper-awareness, which is not dissimilar from what happens to people who suffer from acute stress or even PTSD. I worked with hundreds of firefighters and their families back in 2001, and I can tell you that media exposure and the constant consumption of news can be traumatizing in and of itself, in addition to the real threats we face. Number 2, take care of your body. Take deep breaths, stretch, meditate. Try to eat healthy, well-balanced meals, exercise regularly, and get plenty of sleep. You know, I know that it's pretty crazy at stores right now, and in many cities, non-essential stores already closed. You know, we're limited in our options compared to even a week and a half ago for some of us. But we can get food. It's not going to run out, and we can even get healthy food delivered through Uber Eats and DoorDash. We can go outside for 10 minutes. You know, I'm doing that 3 times a day and really appreciate, you know, walking our dog Chewy when I can tell you a week and a half ago, that was more of an inconvenience to me. I stretch, I try and jog a couple miles, at least 3 or 4 mornings a week, and I make it a point to start winding down about 30 minutes before the time I used to even a week ago, because I know me well enough to know it's going to take a little longer for me to decompress right now. I also use 2 smartphone apps, and I'm going to tell you about those in a few minutes. They've really helped me out. Number 3, make time to unwind and remind yourself that strong feelings will fade. You know, not only taking breaks from watching, reading, or listening to news stories like I mentioned, but maybe just sitting on the back porch with a Bluetooth speaker and some chill vibe and music. Maybe pick up a book you haven't read in a while. Pick up a new book. The important thing to note here is that negative feelings do fade. I mean, you don't remember what you were mad about last Sunday night, I'm sure. You probably never thought again about that person who upset you in traffic 3 weeks ago, even 5 minutes after it happened, let alone now that we're in late March. Strong feelings dissipate, and we can keep them in check when we cushion those strong negative feelings with sights, sounds, words, tastes, smells that are both distracting, which is fine, but also conducive to the production of those feel-good chemicals I told you about earlier. Connect with others, share your concerns and how you're feeling with a friend or a family member, and maintain healthy relationships. We all probably have at least one person that is, well, our person. I was talking to somebody last Tuesday who, while telling me about their person, she said that she and her best friend have formed a pact, in addition to utilizing some of the tips we're going through today. And this promise is that each will listen to the other for 2 minutes every night as they share what they're most concerned about. And that they've committed to doing this without any comment or criticism, judgment or complaint, just a listening ear and maybe some validation. And I got to tell you, I love that idea. I suggested something to her that I'll also share with you here, by the way, which is to write some of those concerns and worries down on a piece of paper, if this seems like it could be a useful exercise for you. That way you've got the added benefit of not only kind of purging your concerns and fears in a safe setting, but also creating a hit list of action items that you can tackle the next day. Also, like, having groceries delivered to my mom because I'm afraid for her well-being, or remembering to call a couple people I used to work with a few years ago at South Miami Hospital, because I think about them and I think they probably want to hear a friendly voice right now. And let's make it a point to, yes, care about everyone in our circle of support, regardless of their different coping styles and personalities, but also be judicious on how we expend our energy and be frugal with the attention and energy we take in from some people. Some people who, despite their best efforts, may not really feed the good feelings sometimes. They may unwittingly incite more of our anxiety and fear. So look, we don't have to cancel them, but like our screen time and negative media consumption, maybe just limit our exposure to them. We can use social distancing, I think, to our advantage in that situation, I guess is one way to look at it. Lastly here, maintain a sense of hope and positive thinking. This may sound like kind of puppy dog rainbow stuff, but let's face it, sometimes puppy dogs and rainbows are pretty awesome if we're honest. So, let's remember that we will get through this. Yeah, it's going to stink for a while, and it's going to be inconvenient, maybe even concerning, even frightening at times. But this is likely the only thing that has ever happened in any of our lifetimes that is affecting everyone. We are all literally in this together. And I know that communal spirit and that positive mindset, won't get supplies any faster, right? But again, as tough and disruptive as this is, with all the scarcity abound right now, let's invest in what we have, what we possess inward and in the material sense, and put attention and action towards people and relationships and opportunities that can benefit from our energy, and add a drop of positivity to a well of abundance. That is a well that doesn't ever have to go dry. We control that. Look, you cannot decide if there's enough tests in your community, or when you'll be back at the office, or when you'll feel that sense of normalcy. That sense of normalcy that I took for granted up until about a week ago, right? I think a lot of us did. But I can control how I react. I still have the power of choice over what I emotionally invest in. Or as a good friend of mine, Steve, puts it, whether I choose to feed the good dog or the bad dog today. Now, I want to take a few minutes to pass along some helpful ways that we can teach and support and take good care of the children that are experiencing this alongside us. These are the little ones who don't have fully developed brains or the vast array of experiences, trials, and errors that we adults do. I want to take a few minutes here for those of us that can benefit from this, because even if we don't have children, or like mine, they're older, you might be able to use this information to help someone else in your circle of friends or family members. And we know, right, that children react in part based on what they see from the adults around them. When parents and caregivers deal with everything that's going on calmly and confidently, they can provide the best support for their children. Parents could be more reassuring to others around them, especially kids, if they are better prepared. Now, we also know that not all children respond to stress in the same way, but there are some common things that we can look out for. Whether it's excessive crying, very heavy worry or sadness, maybe unhealthy eating or sleeping habits, irritability and acting out behaviors, even unexplained headaches or body pain. For anyone who wants to connect with me after this webinar, whether via phone or email, I'm happy to share some additional information here. But briefly now, there are a number of things that we can do to support the children around us during this tough time. Number one, take time to talk with children about the COVID-19 outbreak. Let's answer questions and share facts about the virus in a way that a child can understand. There's helpful information for kids at the cdc.gov website, for example. Reassure children that they're safe. Let's let them know it's okay if they feel upset. Normalize that. And let's not deter it or minimize it or say things we might think are helping, but really only exacerbate the situation and might make some kids feel like they're dumb or overreacting. Like when we almost reflexively say sometimes, hey, it's going to be fine. Don't worry. Or it's okay, or at least you don't have school. They might seem like calming words, but these can inadvertently be dismissive, patronizing, even diminishing words that might not honor or respect a child's feelings, and it might teach them not to share what they're thinking about with us. So let's listen and be attentive, respectful of what the children around us are saying, validate fears, be honest, and share with them how we deal with our own stress so that they can learn how to cope from us. Next, limit children's exposure to media coverage right now. This is really important. They might misinterpret what they hear and get frightened about something they don't understand. Fourth, let's help children around us have a sense of structure. We know it's going to be a while before they get back to school, get back into daycare. So now it's really about defining that new structure today and being consistent with a new schedule like clockwork. Children need structure and predictability. And lastly, very important, be a role model. Take breaks, get plenty of sleep, exercise, and eat well, like we talked about earlier. Connect with your friends, your person, and family members, and rely on your social support system. There's a reason why they tell us to put our oxygen masks on first in an emergency, because we're usually only as good for others, especially children, as we are first in our ability to take care of ourselves. And you know what else is important, everyone? Remembering to breathe, like we started here a few minutes ago. It gets more oxygen to our brains, it slows us down, helps us focus our energy, reduces that cortisol almost instantly, by the way, and increases those feel-good chemicals, dopamine and serotonin. There are resources that can help. Here are a few, and I'd be happy to send out a customized list for each of you individually if you reach out to me and tell me what you really need support with or information on. Mindful.org has great, super brief articles and simple exercises by everyone from the world's most renowned coaches to the most brilliant neuroscientists. Very practical resources that can keep us balanced and peacefully productive right now. I don't know about you all, but I've been diagnosed with what I'll call OLASC syndrome, oh look, a shiny thing disease. So my attention span is not always awesome. And this site has helped me with bite-sized, helpful nuggets of info. The CDC site has some really good family and child support pages, by the way, as does an organization called the Child Mind Institute. I really like some of the content I've come across on the NAMI site. It's an organization whose board I've had the distinct privilege to serve on here in the Miami chapter. In both Harvard and the APA are continuously updating their websites with science-based research and tips to help all of us, like you're all doing now, develop and preserve our care and compassion, resilience, and self-efficacy, and help others do the same. There are also 3 apps I want to tell you about as we begin to wind down here, all of which are available for iPhones and Android devices. Calm is an app I use at least 3 times a day. I especially like the sleep stories to listen to while I'm winding down. Also, the anxiety release and calming stress modules are phenomenal. They've got mindfulness and meditative practices for beginners on up, and they've got awesome music selections customized to your preferences, as well as body scans and breathing exercises that are really simple. And they've got a whole section in the app just for kids. Headspace is another great tool, a simple, wonderful application that offers some of the resources available on Calm. But what I love with Headspace is the breathing exercises in particular, as well as some of the movement and healthy living meditations that they have there. I don't know if any of you have heard of the book or the website or app called 10% Happier, or of Dan Harris, the ABC News correspondent and co-anchor for the weekend edition of Good Morning America. Dan Harris, who had a panic attack live on the air in front of an audience of millions back in March of 2014, has developed this great resource, which I encourage you to check out. It's as academic and science-based as it is simple and instructive and very customizable in the content you can manage. There are articles, 5 to 7 minute videos, and useful exercises. And like Calm and Headspace are also doing starting last week, most of their content is free right now. And boy, when you see the altruism that's coming out of a lot of companies and leaders and even small businesses and communities right now, I think that's a great sign for us. and aligned with our topic for today. Beyond the time you're all investing this morning, I think there are ripples that I see are legitimately turning into waves, and I believe are a powerful force for good amidst all the chaos right now. And as we wrap up here, I want to acknowledge each of you that made the choice to join this webinar today. You deserve to be recognized, honored, and commended for seeking greater awareness, being open to suggestions, being willing to confront your status quo and spread those positive pathogens. I want to thank you for taking the time to join me today. I really encourage you to take care of your mind, nurture your body and your spirit with things that enable your growth and empower you every day. Stay connected to your people, stay strong, and be well. And while I put my contact information up here on the screen, I just want to open it up to questions for the few minutes we have left, with a reminder that I'm also going to stay here in our virtual meeting room after this half hour is up for anyone who has some extra time today. And again, if you do have any questions or comments you'd like to add, feel free to use that chat bubble in GoToMeeting. We've got one of our canine participants who definitely approves of this webinar this morning. That's the best feedback I've gotten in a while.
He sounds a little anxious to me, David.
Oh, maybe. Might be a little anxious. So we can do some breathing. It helps with animals too.
David, this is Chris Brigham. I'm a physician, and I just want to thank you for doing this. This is very well done. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, boy. Thank you, Chris, so much for that feedback. I really appreciate you joining. Thank you. And I wish you a wonderful Friday.
Okay. I wish you all the best and stay healthy.
Likewise. Thank you. See some folks are entering some comments in the chat feature. Thank you as well. I'm really glad this information is helpful. That makes me feel really good that you can find some use and importance in this information. Thank you. And again, open invitation with my contact information here. Please do not hesitate to call me, whether it's my office number or cell. Actually, my office number, I think like a lot of us, is forwarded to my cell phone right now. But whichever those numbers you call, anytime that I can be of help, please reach out to me. And that's my email address. I'll be sure and get back to you very quickly if you reach out to me. And keep in mind, by the way, like I mentioned earlier, if there is any specific information that you would like, if I don't have it, I'll go find it for you. I'm not the expert on it. I'm going to go find out who is, and I'll pull whatever information I can and send it to you. So please reach out to me.